All right, here's the moment of truth. I grounded the harness to the intake, or to the cylinder head, and we got the battery hooked up. So let's key it on. And we got ECU on. So ECU is communicating, which is cool. So a few months ago, we made this plug and play adapter. A little background on this plug and play adapter. This is actually for an AEM Infinity ECU that just randomly failed. So we ended up making this instead of having to try to get a brand new harness for the car. So the one thing that I do want to mention is that, as you can see, I pinned up all of these. There's one pin that does not even connect. It's not connected, and it's not connected because it was like Supra on the inside and was hard to get to, and I guess I didn't solder it, or it didn't make enough of a connection. The good news is that that wire is not even needed. So after I wired and tested everything with my ohm meter, I checked over that pin, and that pin was just an optional input wire, so not even used, and it's this one right here. So in hindsight though, what I should have did was I should have only populated the pins that were required instead of doing all of them, but it was my first time making one of these, so we'll chalk that up to inexperience. Now, with that being said, what's going to the other end of it is our very first Maxx ECU install. So I'm super excited to do this. As you guys know, we sell and support a lot of ECUs, and we'd love to add the Maxx ECU lineup into our repertoire. So we've got the connectors for the cam and crank sensors. We're gonna run that directly into the Maxx ECU shielded wire. We've got pins like that. Now you're gonna see that there's 4 connectors total. The only reason why there's 4 is because I bought extras just to be on the safe side. They took a really long time to get. I guess there was some type of back order on them. So when I found out there was a back order, I went ahead and just threw in an order for, you know, a pair of them, of each one, so the 2 cams and 2 cranks. That way, just in case we need it, we've got spares. So first things first is we're going to, before we do any splicing or any wiring, first things first is we're going to find out where the ECU is going to live. So we're going to start off by plugging the patch harness in, and then just trying to see where we can get the new ECU to fit. All right, so it's gonna be a little hard to see here just because of how dark everything is. We've got the AEM kind of tucked up in that little corner over there. We've got the factory igniter, which I believe we can delete with the Maxx. We're not talking about that just yet, but I think we can. And then this is either the ABS or traction control ECU, I can't remember. And then down here we also have like some CAN bus wiring that goes into the BTI gauge. Ooh. And there's a couple other, I don't know what this harness is, and this is not plugged in either. I wonder what all this is. We got a wire that's just sitting down over here. I believe I troubleshooted this wire right here for something, but we're gonna have to go over into that and figure it out. So we've got our connector plugged in here. This is what we're working with. So the idea is just to kind of get it tucked up under here, so whoever sits in here, they don't have to worry too much about stepping on all this stuff. Now the problem is there's not really a good place of putting the ECU. So I found some cigarettes that are full. I wonder if he was trying to look for those. Those are probably stale because they've been in here a year. And here's some water. Anyways, so I wonder if putting the ECU underneath the seat makes sense. I'm gonna reach down underneath here though. No, there's like an amp down here. Yeah, is this a factory amp? No, the factory amp is still down here. I also found some more cigarettes. Let's see if these are full. These are empty. I don't smoke anymore. I haven't smoked in probably 20 years now. But anyways, so we're gonna find a spot for the new ECU. I don't know if we're gonna mount it underneath the seat or if we're going to do something else. So we're gonna grab the ECU now and the harness that goes with it. So here are the 4 main wires that we do not want to tap into it. So this is lambda 1, which is for the wideband, obviously. This is the home, which is the cam Then we've got the black one here that is the trigger, and then we've got engine ground. So these are the only ones that we do not want to splice. We want to leave these basically virgin, if you will. And then these, on the other hand, are the ones that we can cut into. So the non-shielded wires, we can just run directly into the plug and play adapter. So I'm going to go ahead and separate this all out. And like I said, what's really going to dictate where the ECU will land is going to be these 4 wires right here. Okay, so we got the harness taped up, which was kind of a bear because of the angle that it's at. So hopefully this is going to be enough and it doesn't fall off the hook, which happens a lot more than you think. So I'm going to go ahead and just preemptively feed this upwards. And usually we have 2 people doing this, where one person is inside feeding and the other person is on the outside pulling. But unfortunately today I am all on my lonesome. So let's just pull up on this. And look at that, easy as pie. So now that we've got this up, we're going to go ahead and untangle it, and we're going to try to feed it through this grommet right here. So we've got the wires divided up here. These 2 are the trigger wires here, which is the cam and crank respectively, and we're going to run them to their basically their locations here. So on the cam sensors, it's actually on the driver's side, and then the crank sensor is down here off the crank pulley. So we're going to kind of run these to their respective locations for now. And again, we're trying not to cut any of this until we get the routing done. These 2, on the other hand, is the engine ground and the lambda. So this is easy. This wire grounds to the engine, surprise, and this goes to the O2 sensor. So the O2 sensor obviously is going to be really short because the O2 is right here, right off the turbo. Now, another thing that I'd like to do is that if you look here, you can see that where the logo is, it's like basically 12 o'clock. So I'm gonna try to move the wires down so they're tucked behind the main harness here, but we can do that at a later time. So our primary goal, like I said, is just to kind of start running everything where it needs to go. Once we do that, at that point, we can actually sit down and decide where everything is going to go, engine bay side, or interior side rather, and we should be good to go there. All right, so here's the respective wiring here. So again, this is cam and crank. I've got cam draped over here. So what I'm going to do for cam is I'm going to actually wire it to the middle sensor here. The reason why I'm going to wire it to the middle sensor here is just because that you can use either one. And if I wire it for this one and we stick to this one, if something happens, we can just easily swap over here and make a couple changes to the firing order, and then the car will run. The crank is going to follow the factory wiring. It's just going to come down here through the cover and then down this way. And my original thought was actually to run it this way following this harness to go down here, but I mean, why reinvent the wheel if the wiring is already ran that way? So I don't, 2J cars have been running the harness that way with no problems forever, so we're just going to follow that route. So we've got a little bit more work ahead of us, but we're going to go ahead and get started on this. We'll go ahead and strip these ends and probably crimp everything is probably what's going to have to happen. In the meantime, I'm going to send the customer a text though before I do anything else to see if he's okay with putting the ECU underneath the seat or if he wants it further up here where the AAM was. So we got confirmation from our customer, so we're going to go ahead and put the ECU down off the below the passenger seat there. So we're going to feed this back through since we have a good bit of length, and we're going to add a service loop just to be on the safe side, just so that way we get a little bit of breathing room, just in case that we need to route the wires a little bit differently. So what I'm doing is just sliding this back through, and it's kind of being a pain. So we're going to check on the inside of the car here to see how much space that we have. Okay, so we got a good bit. Like I said, we can add a nice size service loop here, and we just want to do a service loop. That way, if we end up needing a little bit more length, we'll have it. So we got quite a bit of excess now in terms of this wiring here, and I'm pretty confident that we're going to be able to run this down through the carpet, and then like I said, we'll have an exit somewhere around here underneath the passenger seat. So now that that wiring is situated, we are going to get started on the main harness here, which is all this wiring here that looks crazy. We're gonna throw a zip tie on this right quick just to keep this all tame, and we'll do the same thing. Is we'll basically run this harness down, we'll follow the carpet, and then we'll come up out of this corner, and then we'll go over this way, and then that's going to allow us to tuck the harness as far up as we can down. All right, so we got the wires, we've got a nice service loop down here, we've got it zip tied for now, and so this is where the wire is going to run. I've got a zip tie on this end as well here, and this is basically where we're going to cut it off at. So I'm going to slide the zip tie, I'm going to cut this a little bit in front of the zip tie, that way we have a little bit of working room here, and then from there we can finally start attaching everything. So we're going to go ahead and get that cut it. So we got our harness trimmed up. So once you trim it up, sometimes they don't come out perfectly even, so just like you'll have to come back and cut the split ends out of it, if you will. And so you just kind of grab hold of it and see what doesn't fit right or what's not the same length, and just kind of give it a nice little trim so it's even. So at this point I'm going to start grouping wires together. So here we've got sensor ground and 5-volt, so I'm going to go ahead and separate that. The black wires are analog inputs, so we're going to kind of sort through all this. Again, our main concern right now is the 12-volt power wiring, and our engine ground obviously is kind of our main concern, but we're going to go ahead and group them. So what we're going to group is, for instance, we're going to have the injectors grouped together, the coils grouped together, extra analog inputs, and so forth. Those are going to be grouped into their own little section, and that way we can, we can easily go through and focus on what we need to focus on in terms of wiring. So we're going to go ahead and sort that, and what I'm going to use is just a little bit of electric tape, just a small little band around it, nothing crazy, just to kind of get it all sorted. Okay, so we got everything somewhat sorted. We've got our sensor ground / 5-volt power wire right here. There's 3 sensor grounds and 1 5-volt power though. We've got these blue wires, which are like outputs for ignition coil and other general purpose ones. This one's in gray is like injectors. Green here is, green is our general purpose outputs. And then we've got all of these inputs. So not only are these your dedicated ones like coolant temp, IAT, and TPS, there's also like your generic inputs to this as well. And then all of our 12-volt power wires. There's a couple ones. There's one that I'm not sure of, which is called starter, but I'm not sure what that one's for. Obviously, I'm assuming it's like the cranking power, but I'm not sure why an ECU would need that. And then this one's like your actual 12-volt ignition, which is a larger gauge than the rest of them. So I kept this one separate. So this is more or less sorted now. And so as you can see, it just makes it a lot more manageable when you're wiring stuff. You don't want to just kind of go in blindly and wire one by one. You'd be there forever. So this at least will give you an idea. And so the flip side is that once you do this, you can in turn attack it from here on this side of it. So let's just say we're doing coils. We could grab all the coil wires and then tie them off, then attach it one by one here, and then it just makes your life a lot easier that way. So this one's confusing here. This is this bottom red wire is 12 volt ECU. This top wire is 12 volt ignition, right? But when it says ignition, don't think of it as like ignition key on. It's actually for the 12 volt power supply for the ignition coils. So this in the factory configuration should come off of the main relay. Main relay supplies this. We're not concerned about this just yet. Again, like I said, we're just kind of wiring it to key on and ground, so that way we can get the ECU to turn on. So we've got this wired into our 12 volt key wire, and we got a ton of power grounds and stuff like that, but actually, believe it or not, all the grounds are terminated into the ground here off the engine. So there's actually no other grounds on this at all, with the exception of the cylinder head ground. All right, here's the moment of truth. I grounded the harness to the intake, or to the cylinder head, and we got the battery hooked up. So let's key it on, and we got ECU on. So ECU is communicating, which is cool. So that's a start there. We got, okay, yeah, we got codes obviously for things not being hooked up. No surprise there. So now that we have it hooked up, let's see if we can find where we have base maps at. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any base map type action here, so I assume that we have to download it. Yep. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to download a base map for the 2J and see if we can get it working. Okay, so we got the base map open up. We're going to click write to ECU, and it is done. So I'm going to take a look at some of the stuff here in the software, mainly the outputs that we're concerned about. We're going to take a look at a couple of these outputs here and then just see how everything is wired up. I don't know if there's like a main relay wiring in here or not, so we're going to check this out.